Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Lazarus. Lazarus is one of those characters that's not as fun to play as any other character just because his stats are kind of suboptimal, but not suboptimal in a way that they're not good, it's just that they're not really interesting. For example, some characters maybe have a slower stat speed, and some characters might have higher damage or something like that, but Lazarus is actually exactly the same as Isaac, the only difference being he has slightly less range, which is a bummer for him just because I think whenever you pick up Lazarus, you kind of end up being disappointed just because he's so uneventful, because nothing really happens. Besides that, his only shtick is kind of dying, and sadly that usually can be utilized well, because killing yourself and kind of risking all your HP just to come back slightly stronger, very slightly stronger, is usually not worth it, at least not in my book, but thankfully we got the perfect item or the perfect card for Lazarus then, that's Suicide King. The Suicide King card then allows you to kill yourself, and you get a bunch of consumables, sometimes you get some good items. Basically, you kill yourself in order to get some things out of it, and usually you can't do that unless you have some respawn items, but thankfully because we are Lazarus, we can afford to kill ourselves. We'll come back slightly stronger, and we'll also get all the benefits from using the Suicide King card. And like I said, those benefits can be something very useful like some items, or they can be just a few consumables, which are also very useful just because we're early on. Basically, I'm saying that there's really no reason we shouldn't use the Suicide King card, especially because it seems so perfect for Lazarus. Besides that, the only disadvantage he has is his low range, but thankfully because we will be respawning, that's not a problem, but also we picked up the Continuum Tears from our item room, and this item allows you to kind of shoot through the end of the screen, and then the tears appear on the other side of the screen, and that's very useful just because you can kind of kill enemies on the other side if they're maybe hiding behind rocks, but also more importantly, just I think it looks cool. But also what it does, it increases your range quite significantly, and not only that, it also gives you Spectral Tears. And I think that is a stat or maybe a combination that isn't really mentioned a lot by people, but I think Spectral Tears are very useful if you don't have flight, just because there are a lot of rooms which have enemies kind of hiding behind rocks, and also a lot of boss room layouts, which makes things quite harder to hit, some Krampus fights or something like that, but in having the ability to kind of shoot the enemies and not regard for where they're standing is very useful in my book, and I really like Spectral Tears, and that's the main reason why I pick up the Continuum Tears. Okay, so going on, besides that, what happened is when we used the Suicide King card, we got a Tammy's Head, and that's awesome. We also got 10 cents and 4 bombs, and we were actually able to bomb our way to the shop, which is very useful, just because we were able to see maybe if the shop had some good items. What it had, and what I should have bought, is a Spirit Heart, because if you don't buy a Spirit Heart on the second floor, and if you only have red health, this can happen. The little poop can dash in a random direction, it's gonna hit you, it's gonna first of all take your health away and possibly kill you, but it's also going to reduce your devil chances to practically 0 or maybe about 30% if you manage to actually kill Pin without dying. That looks quite plausible just because Pin is an easy boss, but we still lost the majority of chance of actually getting the devil deal, and we don't. So the fact that we kind of wasted our chance there by not buying the Spirit Heart on the previous floor is a big bummer, because that's definitely something we should have done, or maybe I should have done. Maybe if you're playing, you were smart enough to do it, or maybe you just didn't get hit, which is an option. I actually did want to buy it on this floor, but I didn't get any keys, so for that reason I couldn't get to the shop. But for some reason on the previous floor I didn't even consider buying the Spirit Heart. I didn't even look in the shop if there was a Spirit Heart, and as a result of that, this is actually turning into a more difficult run than it should be, because not only does this kind of change which items we get, but it also changes the future that deal with the devils, because now on this floor we are going to deal with the devil, and on the next floor we're not going to get it. So if there was a good item in the first deal with the devil, or maybe in the next deal with the devil, are all kind of items that we're gonna get is thrown off, just because the order of items or the devil deals which you'll get on the floors is different from the majority, and as you can see at the end, you'll see that getting that deal on the devil in the second floor was very important, because it actually contained Brimstone, and the combination of Brimstone plus Tammy is a combination that just allows you to win the game outright, not only because basically you have Brimstone, but also because Tammy increases the shots you deal with your damage, and having 8 or so Brimstone shots at once unleashed in a room just means that you're going to wreck basically anything with no danger to yourself. So yeah, if you take anything away from this video, is buy Spirit Hearts early on if you can afford it, and don't get hit on the second floor, because the second floor deal with the devil can end up having some really useful things. And in this, how this turned out basically is not only did we not get the deal with the devil on the second floor, we also didn't manage to get any good items on the rest of the devil deals. And I checked the Reddit threads and I read how people do on these dailies, and this daily was actually considered to be one of the easiest in a bunch. But just because of how things turned out for me, and because I didn't manage to get hit by the little poop which just randomly dashed in my direction, I didn't manage to get those benefits that other people did, and I was actually stuck in a very, very bad run. So at this point we didn't really get any damage ups. We got some tier ups, which I guess are okay. I prefer tier ups over damage ups because I think the DPS is more significant, and I also think it's much more fun to play because you have more things to do, I guess. This was actually the first damage up we got, the growth hormones, besides just being respawned as Lazarus 2, which gives us more damage. I still didn't feel weak, but at the same time I wasn't really feeling strong. But I think the illusion of me not being weak came from having Tammy's Head, which not only did it do increased damage, because like I mentioned, Tammy's Head does do increased damage. What also happens is, if you miss any shots, they go to the end of the screen and re-enter the other side of the screen, and they can still hit the enemies, and for that reason it's a bit more potent than it would usually be. We also got Sackboy, which is an item that is very useful for Shrek points just in general, because what it does is give you a chance to get sacks instead of consumables, and whenever you get sacks, those sacks actually have a greater chance of having consumables in them. So in a sense, you're trading consumables to get more consumables, but for some reason it was very uneventful for me. And I think the reason for that is just because I was kind of in a rush later on, and I didn't really have the chance to explore a lot of rooms. So for that reason, I didn't have the chance to get a lot of consumables or those sacks, which would then give me consumables. And I was kind of stuck in a weird position where, even though I had this great item, which should theoretically give me just a bunch of keys and bombs, I just ended up being in a place where I couldn't really utilize that to get the bombs and keys, which I would then use to open chests or whatever. So it was, all in all, kind of a bummer run, just in the sense that even though everything kind of went right, not things didn't really go right, at least not for me. But it's nice to know that at least it was my mistake that kind of led to this. Just because I didn't buy that stupid spirit heart, and I really should have, or maybe I just shouldn't have gotten hit, but you can't really control that because the AI of the enemies is quite random. Thankfully, the one saving grace we have is the Unicorn Stump, and that is an item that has an one room charge, which means that after every room we're gonna get a charge, and we turn invincible, and we can use that invincibility with our cube of meat or our bandage cube of the ball of bandage to actually. And then run into enemies to actually kill them, because we are invincible, they cannot hit us, and we can use our ball of bandages to hit them, and for that reason, that's a very useful combo to kind of clear the rooms. But for some reason it turned out, or maybe I think just because there were a lot of enemies which moved fast, it was kind of hard for me to stay on top of them and deal with some consistent damage. So even though we had this great combo, which would usually be enough to kind of guarantee a run where we don't get hit and just kind of clear rooms fast, it turned out to be not as potent as it could have been. And I think this is this run in a nutshell. A chance to be really good and potent, but for some reason, maybe just due to circumstance or how I played, it didn't turn out that well. I've been harping on how bad this run was for the past 3 minutes. But I think this is really noticeable when I start fighting Hush. Not only, obviously the first phase is not that difficult to just dodge his bullets, I wasn't really worried about it. I still have my Unicorn Stump, I have 4 bombs which I plan on using on the enemies, and I still have 12 health. So by basically kind of knowing what Hush does because I fought him so many times, I wasn't really in too much worries here. I was kind of afraid that he would spam a lot of enemies. And that's exactly what he did at the start with the flies, but thankfully the flies aren't that annoying, but I was starting to sense a problem. It really took me a lot of time to actually kill the flies, and at this point that's not really that big of a deal, just because we can still kind of focus on Hush, but as soon as he starts doing his more complicated attacks with tears, and he starts spawning the blue guys, which I'm still not sure how they're called, these guys, things will get a bit more hectic, just because we'll have so many things to dodge on. The blue guys have significantly more HP than flies, they move faster, which means they're much better at surrounding you, and they kind of move in an erratic pattern as well, so you can't really lure them to one side and then go on the other side like you can do with the flies. So things turn out kind of badly, and I'll just slow it down here so I can show you. You can see that there's just a bunch of them, and every one of them takes maybe 4 or 5 shots to kill, and they just move in a way that's kind of hard to predict, and you can't really escape from them. The fact that you have Hush shooting, you have the blue polyp shooting, just makes it super hard to actually navigate this run. And I was surprised by how weak we were. And like I said, I think I had the illusion of being much stronger than I did, just because at first I did have that Tammy's head, and then I did have my unicorn stomp, which kind of carried me through the rooms. But as soon as I actually entered and I couldn't use that to the greatest advantage, I just noticed just how bad it was. And you can see my health starts dropping significantly, and I somehow managed to get hit on these continuum shots because I was in an awkward position. Thankfully, because I do have some orbitals, they kind of saved me for a bit, but obviously that's not gonna last long, just because Hush is a bit of a mini and he starts shooting some weird shots here and there, and he does manage to get me, and I really did not expect for me to die so soon. Soon in the sense of dying at Hush. Like I said, I really did feel stronger, and the fact I actually managed to score in the 1000th, I think gives a very clear indication of what this shrine could have been. The fact that there were 1,000 people which performed better than me, I think that does mean that that second floor deal with the devil was of significant importance. Like I said, having Tammy's head and Brimstone would allow us to kind of stomp this run, but not getting it meant that we were stuck in this run that wasn't really strong at all, that kind of devolved into madness very fast. But yeah, that's just what's gonna happen on a daily run, and I'm glad you guys could see just how big of an impact something as simple as the deal with the devil on the second floor can make. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.